Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Maplewood Community Design Review Board. Today is Tuesday, September 20th, 6 o'clock p.m. Next item is the roll call. I see we are all here except for Amanda Reinhardt. So we have 4 people. That constitutes a quorum. We may proceed. Next item is approval of the agenda. Staff, any corrections, additions, et cetera?
Chair and board, staff does not have any amendments to the agenda as presented.
Okay, anything from the board?
No additions. I motion to approve the agenda for the September 20th CDRB meeting.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Hearing no discussion, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 That's unanimous. It passes. We will move on to the approval of the minutes from our meeting of July 19th, 2022. Staff, any corrections, et cetera?
Chair and board, staff does not have any amendments to the minutes as presented.
Any comments from the board?
I don't have any.
Okay. I will move to approve the minutes.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we will take that to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous also. We will proceed. Next item is new business, design review, multifamily residential project at 1136 and 1160 Frost Avenue East. Report, please, from staff.
Thank you, Chair and board. As mentioned, we are looking at a proposed multifamily residential project at 1136 and 1160 Frost Avenue. You can see on the overview map on the screen with the red outline, that is the project site, approximately 5 acres in size. The developer is looking to build a 150 unit apartment building. To move forward, the applicant needs city approval of a comprehensive plan amendment, a conditional use permit, design review, and then a public vacation of unused right-of-way and a lot combination. Tonight, the design board is looking at the design review aspect. Later tonight at 7 p.m., the Planning Commission will be holding a public hearing on this item, and they will be reviewing the comprehensive plan amendment and the conditional use permit. The project will be comprised of a mix of studio, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedroom apartments. All units would have either a concrete patio or a recessed deck. Amenities would include a club room, fitness room, roof deck, outdoor pool, pickleball court, and a dog run. So that provides an overview of the project itself. These principles from the Gladstone Neighborhood Redevelopment Plan were included in your staff report. I'm not going to read them out loud one by one, but it was provided in the staff report to provide context to the planning that has been done in this neighborhood. So the Gladstone Master Plan was adopted in 2007, so 15 years ago. So it provides a guide to development in this neighborhood. I don't think that the city is hemmed in, that it has to occur exactly how this master plan is laid out, but it is, again, a guide to how development proceeds moving forward. Again, I think looking 15 years later, what are other conditions, what are other city goals, that goes into what projects should be reviewed against. The current controls of the property is currently guided medium density residential and then is zoned R3 multiple dwelling. The 1136 Frost site is the former Maplewood Marine building, and then 1160, which is what the property that the city owns and purchased in 2017 for future redevelopment, is currently vacant. No uses have been proposed for either of these sites in recent history, and the proposed use before you tonight is a permitted use within the zoning district. As I mentioned before, the project does require a comprehensive plan amendment that will be reviewed by the Planning Commission at their public hearing at 7, and then ultimately decided by the City Council next month. Currently, medium density residential allows up to 10 units per acre. High density residential does allow up to 25 units per acre. City code does provide incentives to construct underground parking, and that incentive is adding on to the project size. So for every space of underground parking, the site grows essentially by 300 square feet. This adds just over 48,000 square feet to the project size. The applicant's proposal to build 150 units would meet the high-density residential designation as defined by the city's comprehensive plan. Did want to point out the city has considered comprehensive plan amendments in this neighborhood before. If you look kitty corner from this site, where you see the cross-hatched areas to the northeast, In the 2030 comprehensive plan, that area was guided for up to 31 units per acre. It is currently guided now up to 50 units. So in the 2040 plan, the city did boost that in the mixed-use neighborhood high density up to 50 units. So again, the site that we're looking at tonight would be up to 25 units, half that density. The conditional use permit, again, that the Planning Commission will be looking at later tonight with the public hearing is required because the building is more than 3 stories or 35 feet in height. This is a 5-story building, flat roof building, which will be typically 56 feet and 8 inches tall, bumps up a bit just beyond 58 feet in the cornices. Providing context, again, down the road to the Frost English Village redevelopment, those buildings are approximately 51 feet tall. They are pitched roofs, not flat roofs. There's a difference in architecture as well. So moving into design review, the site is accessed by a single drive off Frost Avenue on the east side of the site. The building is centered more or less on the site at its closest point to the residential properties to the west. The building would be set back just under 103 feet. It is required to be set back 100 feet. The building would be 45 and a half feet from Frost Avenue. That requirement is 30 feet. It would be set back 115.4 feet from the vacant residential property to the south, and then 131 and a half feet from the Gladstone Savannah to the east. All building and parking lot setbacks are being met with this proposed project. In the northwest corner, a dog park has been proposed. As proposed in the site plan before you tonight, it would be set back 33.2 feet from the residential property to the south. Also, a gazebo in the southwest corner of the site would be set back 29 feet from the west property line. Staff is recommending that both those amenities be set back at least 50 feet from the neighboring residential property lines. That would be in line with the minimum residential setback for when you have either multifamily buildings or a commercial building that are adjacent to single-family homes. 50 is that minimum. The proposed building would be constructed of contrasting light and dark fiber cement lap siding, wood look lap siding accent boards. There would be a brick facade used throughout the lower levels, cement trim boards to be used throughout the building. The applicant is present tonight and has a material sample board that the board can look at. Again, just want to make reference to the Gladstone Neighborhood Redevelopment Plan. There are design considerations that are outlined in that master plan that talks about building articulation and building massing. So when you look at the top floor or any floors above 4, the master plan did talk about stepping back that building. But that plan also did talk about these buildings that are proposed specifically that would have been talked about for this site would be closer to Frost Avenue, closer to the Savannah than what this building is being proposed. So I think there should be and can be some consideration that this building has more of a setback off both Frost and Savannah when you're considering those other architectural elements. Looking at parking, and the developer is requesting a parking waiver. Multifamily buildings are required to provide 2 parking spaces for each unit, with one of those spaces being covered. So for this project, 300 spaces would typically be required, 150 of those underground or in a covered garage. As we mentioned at the front end, the applicant is providing 161 spaces underground and then 83 surface spaces. And the developer provided a rationale and a narrative in the staff report for why it feels it's justified to have a parking waiver. The applicant can speak more to specific questions, but in summary, they have found with other projects that they have developed in similar conditions, and then also taking into context where this site is in the city of Maplewood, they feel that this is ample parking for this site. Looking at the landscape plan, applicant is removing 12 trees, but planting 154 new trees. That meets the city's tree replacement requirements. In addition, numerous shrubs, perennials, grasses being planted throughout the site. I want to talk about screening requirements because I know this usually comes up in similar buildings, and what the code requires is a 6-foot tall, 80% opaque screening situation when headlight glare may impact nearby residential properties. Now, the parking lot and the drive access to this is insular to the site. The building surrounds the parking lot, so staff does not feel that that type of situation is occurring. So we feel that the landscape plan is providing the adequate screening that code would require. In addition, landscape requirements, the code is very specific, a 20-foot landscaped area between multifamily buildings and single-family homes, that's being provided. Just information, not for this group to review tonight, but the applicant is requesting vacation of portions of 3 unused rights-of-way that are impacted in this area. First, the full vacation of Edward Street, which bisects the 2 sites, and then the north half of Fenton Avenue, which would be vacated on the south side of the site, and then the east side of the site is Frank Street. Again, these are unused right-of-ways, no plans for public improvements or putting a street in this area, so this would be vacated and absorbed as part of the project parcel. Applicant's also seeking approval. Currently, there's 3 different parcels that make up these properties, would be combined into a single property for the project as a whole. City sent 53 property owners a neighborhood survey. Then we also sent another letter for the public hearing. That's tonight with the Planning Commission at 7. Additional letter will be sent for the public vacation, as the city council is required to hold that public hearing anytime a vacation request is made. So in the end, 3 different touch points from the city to the neighborhood regarding this project. The city received 9 replies. 5 were included with your staff report. 4 will be handed out tonight at the Planning Commission for them to consider as part of their public hearing. All 9 at that time will be included with any reports to the city council. So with that, with the conditions of approval found in this report, staff is recommending approval of this project. Again, the applicant is present and can stand for questions.
Would the applicant like to come forward? We'll probably have you come and show us those a little bit later. Yep.
Thank you, board members and council member and Mr. Martin. My name is Ari Peretz, and I'm representing Reuter Walton Development. We are the proposed developer for this site. We've had a really good experience so far working with city staff and also through the neighborhood engagement that we've done in informing the design. And we're certainly excited to answer any questions that you have. I think Mr. Martin did a pretty good job covering the details. We're happy to go through the specific material board that DJR, our architect, has prepared. But if in advance you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is this rental units, or is it
Rental units.
ownership?
Rental units.
Okay, you said you had a good rationale for having less than our usual required parking spots. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so in the staff report, we included a write-up that within it had a table of projected demand based off of unit type. So we look at certainly the unit count, and then we break it down by how many types of units do we have and what is the quantity of each. And based off of the experience we have developing similar properties all over the Twin Cities, this will be the 41st. We have a pretty good demand set to understand what does a typical alcove, what is a typical one bed den, et cetera, demand in parking. And then we make sure that we are providing that with a little bit of extra cushion in case we end up undershooting or in case demand ends up exceeding what our historical data is suggesting. So we project a demand of approximately 214 spaces. That's compared against the 244 that we have as part of this proposal, 160 roughly inside the garage and 83 outside. So that leaves a 30 space kind of flex that we can use for visitors, we can use for additional rented parking if we end up undershooting it. But we feel like this parking supply is well above where we think this is going to land. And we drew, so to make sure that we were comparing apples to apples and not an urban property informing a suburban demand. The most similar project that we did in Roseville, similar area, similar building typology, similar demographics, projected demographics, had a lower parking ratio and is not fully utilized. So we felt like we're well serving the demand, projected demand here.
Okay, so your sample, is that your own projects, or are you looking at other companies' projects too?
It's first and foremost, our own projects, and then it's also informed by our architect's experience doing many more projects than we've done across the Twin Cities. And we pull those together. If we feel like there's ever any ambiguity or we're not sure, we'll bring in a third-party consultant to test those assumptions and make sure that we're not getting out of our lane. In this case, because it was so clear and so similar to so many other projects that we've done around the Twin Cities, in locations very similar to this location on Frost, and in cities very similar to Maplewood, we did not do a third-party parking consultant, because we're pretty confident in what this will be.
Okay. I'm just going to ask staff something. The parking ordinance, the width of parking spaces carries onto a project like this?
Correct, Chair and Board. So 9.5 feet is what would be required for parking width, and that is represented in
It is represented,
the
okay.
plans. Yeah.
Where's the 10 feet that's required? Is that for commercial properties or?
High turnover commercial.
High turnover, okay. Yep. I got to ask a lot of questions about parking. We've had some issues with parking on some other projects before, and so just like to make sure everything's covered. And
Good question,
you
Sam.
had a question.
The question is, what is percentage of studio to one bedroom or two bedroom in the building? So that would drive parking too. If you have your studio, you might not have two cars compared to a.
Exactly. I have that table. It should be in your staff report. It's on the 5th page.
Okay.
You can see exactly what it breaks down to by unit type.
So, Mr. Martin went through some community spaces here, facilities that would be shared by all the units, like a community room or a swimming. Can you go over all the facilities you're providing that will be shared by all the residents here?
Sure. Actually, do you want to do that, Scott? I'm happy to. Okay, yeah. I'm going to turn it over to the architect who can give you a narrative.
Good evening, Scott England from DJR Architecture. I'm the project manager on this project. We currently are proposing, there's a nice lobby with a mailroom and a package room that's right by the front entrance of the building. There's a community conference room as well as a manager's office and a workroom. That's more in the center of the building. Because we have the dog walk that's more on the northwest corner of the building, there's an access that comes in on the west facade but toward the north end of it. So that's a good place to bring your dog in after walking in. So we have a dog wash at that location. We are also going to have a bike room, or for just bikes for the residents, even though it's not necessarily required, but it's a good idea for us. Then, because the site slopes down as it heads toward the east, when we get on the south wing, toward the east end of that wing, we're going to have a two-story space, or part of it will be two one-story portions, and the other part will be a two-story space. We're looking to have a community room, kind of like a party room, if you will, or a club room and such. Outside of that is going to be a swimming pool. We're looking at potentially adding a hot tub, a fire pit, a pickleball court. In the one corner of the property, the southwest corner, we have a gazebo in there that we are looking to move that gazebo to stay into the setback requirements that the city was asking. We have no problem in making that move. We also don't have any problem in shifting the dog park to the north to provide better setback from the residential property right to the south of it there. We also have, there's an exercise room on the first floor that's adjacent to that community space. Common area restrooms that go with all of that community type spaces on that level. Then up on the top floor, toward the east end of the south wing, we're stepping back the building at that location. We're going to have a rooftop deck, which will have beautiful views of the park and the savannah that's going on that side of the property. And then there's a community room that's just inside of that that will also have, it's going to have a kitchenette area, a fireplace, so it'll be very, very nice. So that's,
Swimming pool is part of this project?
the swimming pool is exterior, yes.
I understand.
Right. That is part of the project, correct.
And you're providing 161 stalls underground parking.
That is correct, what we have right now.
Why cannot you provide all 244 stalls underground parking?
Why couldn't we?
Yes.
It's expense, and because each parking stall that's underground is about $30,000 as compared to the surface stalls that are more like $15,000. So there's an expense there, and there's also, I believe when you look at the requirements for parking, there's a factor in there for a certain amount of guest parking or extra parking in effect. So you want to make sure that you have a certain amount of that parking is a surface parking lot. just for guests and such. Whereas we are more than one-to-one parking in the building right now, 161 stalls compared to 150 apartment units.
And one thing I'll add, it also offers some economic flexibility to our renters to either decide to pay for an underground inside space, or in some cases not pay at all and be able to park outside for free or at a significantly reduced rate. So just like we have some expensive units and some less expensive units, we have some more expensive parking and less expensive parking.
Yeah, some other members of my board here may see not enough parking. The way I see the site plan, I see all parking. I say, why do we need all this parking? I know I'm approaching it from a different point of view, from community facilities. All I see in your courtyard is just blacktop or concrete. So to me, it's a concern more than just parking. Parking is fine. Other people may have concerns about this. My concern is we are giving you the opportunity to build 150 units. This is a big amount. This is a big project. And my concern is that we provide facilities there for the people there, the children there, and you don't want them to go to the park, which is half a mile away. I mean, so my concern is what facilities are you providing in this site itself? I know the city has requirements for parking, but left to me, I would just wipe out the complete parking in the inside of the courtyard that you're talking about and make it all underground, and that would be a fantastic space right inside the courtyard to provide other community spaces for the people living in these 150 units.
So, very good point and very good question. The one thing that I'll add in terms of our, an amenity that is not ours, but it is an amenity that we're doing our best to embrace, is the adjacent savanna. In all of the park area, playground, accessibility, trail connections that it offers, and being able to program our site so that it speaks to it, so that they're integrated in as many ways as they can practically be. And that's part of the reason why we didn't plan to have like a big outdoor accessible area solely on our site, solely accessible to our community. We wanted to encourage our residents to be able to use community facilities because they're literally right next door.
I'm still concerned about parking, so, because the street parking is really scarce in that area. And and I know, most of the time you're not gonna have a problem, but, I'm thinking like around the holidays, that might be a problem with parking. And of course, around the holidays, we tend to have bad weather, which just makes it even worse. Staff, are you confident that the 244 spaces proposed is adequate?
Chair and board, yeah, correct. As the recommendation lays out in the staff report, we are recommending approval of the parking waiver. So we do feel that the site, again, given the context of the location, the project type, that it is an acceptable request.
Okay. I'm gonna stop talking about parking. Anyone else have anything else to add?
So obviously, there's the staff note about moving the gazebo away from the 4 residences that are on the backside. Your stormwater design plan pushes that trail like really tight to those residences. Is the only barrier there a couple of pine trees? As rendered in the landscape plan?
When you look at the landscaping, we are putting an extensive amount of landscaping right up against our west property line to help screen the the existing residences.
As I count along those 4, I mean, there's about 20 pine trees. What caliper trees are you guys anticipating planting that screen is gonna take 12, 15 years to grow? It's not an immediate. I don't think you guys.
Absolutely, it's not immediate. So, yeah.
I think that trail is, in addition to the gazebo, with the number of people that are gonna be in this complex, is gonna be utilized. And it's so tight to the back of those 4 residents with not an appropriate screen. I just don't feel like you guys are making the effort to truly screen this site from those 4 residents. They're gonna look out their back window and that's all they're gonna see. And so I'm not convinced that landscape plan on that side of the property is, addressing that need. Obviously, the staff already has the note about moving that gazebo to the 50 and 50. which is going to affect your stormwater. I think as you look at that, I'm going to have a recommendation on getting that trail moved away from those property boundaries
We
to
can certainly
give
look
that
into that.
space and to give that buffer to that neighborhood.
We can certainly look into that, you know, maybe just moving the trail on the east side of the storm water area. And recognize that those are not standing water, those ponding areas. That's just where stormwater is managed. It maybe have some standing water in it in a heavy event for a day or two. That is the intent of it, so it slows down the flow of stormwater into the overall system.
There's a lot of topography happening on that side of the site. I can see there's 18 feet from the bottom of that basin to, you know, the edge of the neighbors on the southmost point, a little bit less on the northern, you know, two houses, but there's no other place for people to go. They're gonna have to take that trail if they wanna go and use that gazebo or that side of the property, and I just feel like we're pushing it way too close. And you're gonna have a lot of neighbors who are gonna wanna go sit out by that gazebo, within, you know, residential, single-family homes, right there. Aesthetically, because we haven't touched on that, I think the building is an attractive building. I mean, I'm looking at the materials, I looked at the materials that were outlined in the, you know, the rest of the board can comment, but I mean, they're good quality materials, they're durable materials, you know, as far as the quality of the building structure.
Actually, can you just bring those forward to us?
The base of the building is brick, so this is definitely a masonry base. I do that on all of my buildings because it takes the abuse of Minnesota weather. The cementitious siding, which is it's cement-based, so it's pre-finished and painted on the site, but then it lasts a long time as far as the paint finish on it and such. There is pre-finished metal for the cat flashing, as well as pre-finished aluminum for the storefront. The different colors of paint that we have going on the siding that you can see from the rendering. And then this is a capstone, which is basically sitting on top of the brick. And it's the transition between the brick and the siding. But, so everything, my developer, his direction to me is I want low maintenance. So that is what we're doing, quality materials for low maintenance or ease of maintenance.
Okay, and the mortar matches the brick as indicated there?
I don't believe that I'm sorry, it's right here. So
Yeah.
It's intended to
Intended.
blend it, but not
Okay.
an exact match.
Okay.
It's really hard to get an exact match.
Mm-hmm.
And where is all the lighting on the face of the building? I assume there are some lights.
There are lights that are on the building, and we've submitted a photometric plan that is in your report also. So there's a gentle balance between providing enough light, say, on the west side of our building, and that the gap between us and the single-family residence. So we want enough downlights going on there so that it's a safe environment, but not so much that it would ever cast any lights onto the neighboring properties. And then obviously our pool area, pickleball court, and the fire pit, that's going to have some lighting that's on for the residents' safety and protection, during appropriate times of the day.
And all the mechanical units are all housed inside the building?
That is correct.
And how,
So there will be some corridor ventilation that happens up on the roof, but it's way in the center of the building, and they're only like 6 feet tall. So standing on the ground, even from across the street, you won't even be able to see them.
and how is the rainwater on the roof discharged?
The rainwater on the roof is discharged, obviously comes down from the roof down into the garage, and then it's goes out horizontally to the stormwater pond that's on the west side, for that portion of the building, to the stormwater pond that's on the south side, south and east side. So the intent is that we are getting all that stormwater into those ponding areas as much as possible so that it can be filtered and slowed down.
Internal drainage for it, not external scuppers.
Correct. Now, there's overflow drainage that will also be internal until it gets down to right above grade, and then it'll discharge at that point. But those are emergency overflow, just in case, the primary drain is plugged. So you always have to have that emergency backup. But those are only emergency ones.
Okay, this late note we got, somebody concerned about headlights flashing.
For the next project.
Never mind.
All of our cars are on the inside of our U's, so I don't think we'll have any headlights.
Well, because I didn't understand it. Now I know.
I read that too, and I didn't understand it, and then I realized it was for the next
Wondering,
project.
did I miss an element of the design?
No, not all of your cars, 161.
Yes.
83 are still outside.
So as Emily Latella would say, never mind.
What is nearest transit, so with the mix of probably people with cars and not cars, when's the nearest transit line to this?
It'll be the,
I couldn't see in the map.
it'll end up being the bus rapid transit that's on the, eventually built on the Bruce Vento Trail.
Yeah, Chair and Board, so yeah, that's a proposed transit line. There is nearby existing bus service. I can pull up that
That's
line
7
right
days a
now.
week.
What's that?
Is it 7 days a week service?
I'd have to pull up
Oh,
that,
okay,
yeah. I can look that up. If there's other questions, we can come back to that.
Okay.
The ground level apartments, they don't have a railing on their balcony, right? They can exit to the lawn.
The majority of them, correct. As we get closer to the overhead garage door, then obviously the grade is dropping. So those will be pad, or balconies, like, you know, the
Yep.
upper floors. But those that are right on the ground level, we actually encourage the residents to be able to go from their patio right out onto the grass. It seems to be quite popular with dog owners.
So for, which I think is great, for your, just the covenants, conditions of the rental agreements, grills and storage of items on those patios, what are your limitations?
If I could step back in my presentation a little bit, we do have 2 grills that are going out on the community deck that's right off of the lower level by the pool. And there's also gonna be another grill that's up on the roof.
But do you allow the
We-
residents?
You
Pass it
allow
over.
electric grills, not gas grills.
Not gas grills?
Charcoal grills, just electric grills.
And they're like bike storage, and they're not allowed to like store items like
No,
that
we-
on that
we
patio on the
encourage-
lower level?
I'm not sure that we have a strict limitation against bike storage on the terraces, although I'd be happy to consider adding one.
I mean, the
We-
goal of this whole development over here is walkable, pedestrian friendly, and the last thing I want is all of a sudden, we created this pedestrian friendly, and then bam, there's all this stuff that people are just looking at that are
So
piled
we
into
have
them.
bike storage in a couple different places. We put bike racks in front of every parking stall so that somebody can easily just hang their bike in front of their car if they have one of the inside spaces. There's also a bike room and inside the building, community spaces to be able to store bikes.
And then in that bike room is a fix-it station, so that any repairs that you need to do to your bike, you can do it there.
The terraces on the first level aren't covered, so a bike owner would have to not care very much about their bike to just leave it outside all the time.
Staff, is that a condition that we're able to include as far as the exterior properties outside of the courtyard properties? That there's
Yeah.
conditions of rental?
Chair and Board, correct, that would be an acceptable amendment.
No issues on our part. That's a good
Okay.
idea.
Do you foresee access to the bike room as a cost, or is that something you would believe that would be for anyone that had wanted to use it?
You'd be able to use it.
Okay.
And just to loop back, Chair and Board, on the transit question, the 64 line runs on English, so that would be the nearest bus line that does run daily.
Pardon?
Visitors now.
Yeah. Are there any visitors here that would like to say something about this project? And before you, we can only address things that have to do with design and trees. Would that be within what you have to say?
And Chair and Board, I'd just like to interject, so there's 2 meetings tonight. The official public hearing that people have received notice to is at 7 o'clock with the Planning Commission. Obviously, the board can entertain comments if it would like.
Yep.
But the public hearing is later tonight.
Yep.
So this would
Okay.
be design comments or
Yeah. So, yeah, I just.
Landscape.
Yeah. I just don't want to deal with anything we can't.
I understand. I will.
Would you like to come forward?
Design.
Pardon?
I will limit it to design.
perfect.
Okay.
Come forward to the,
you like me to sign in?
Yes. And then also state your name for the record.
My
I'm going to
name
limit
is-
you to 1 minute because we do have another item on the agenda, too.
It says 3 minutes availability
Well,
for
that's
speaking.
for another part of the meeting. 'Cause right now, we're just adding this in this design consideration.
Okay, my name is Kim Schmidt. I live at 1800 Phelan Place. And this brings us back to nearly 20 years ago, I was on the Gladstone Redevelopment Coalition. We worked with the city to come up with a design for the area, which included size and size limitation, and also exterior and facade. And I'm extremely disappointed in the city with considering increasing that density level. 5 stories within our neighborhood, I think, is inappropriate, will not blend, does not go with the character of the neighborhood. And that was all of the considerations that we talked about when we went through this. It was a nearly year-long meetings that we worked on developing this. And then they went and changed it from 31 units to 50 units. I mean, this was a compromise between the citizens and the city. The citizens were not happy. We were not pleased with the density, but it was something that we decided we could live with. And the city was not happy because they wanted more density. And now we come back to today, and they're like, well, we don't care what that was back then. We don't care about what the residents have to say, all the work that we did, all the time that we spent. The city is now just going to do what it wants to do and ignore the residents.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else from the board? Would like anyone care to make a motion?
Yeah, I was just seeing where that gazebo note was. We're page 18 and 19, correct? 17, 18, and 19?
For the gazebo?
Yeah. I'll just add it as a new point. Okay.
Yep, that might be the easiest thing to do.
Okay. Welcome friendly amendments. All right, I motion to approve the community design review resolution for the project in question. Items, section 3, I believe, staff, is that correct, that we're? Okay, section 3.01, items 1 through 12 as proposed by staff. And then an amended number 13, the gazebo on the southwest corner with a minimum of a 50-foot setback, and the path moved to the opposite side of the drainage pond on the back of that, so it would be on the building side of that from a landscape perspective. And then the third element of that would be the enhancing the vegetative break between the property on the west side and the residential properties with a more dense vegetated break.
Did you want to add something about moving the trail?
I think I got the trail.
Oh,
Yep,
you
I got all
did,
3 of
okay.
those.
All right. Okay,
It'd be like 13A, B, and C.
we have an amended motion. Does anyone second that?
I have one more
One more.
amendment to add to this.
Okay.
For ground level units on the north, west, and south elevations that are outward facing, that the developer include language in the rental agreements that, they're not able to store items out on their patio, with the limitation to maybe an electric grill. Or a table and chairs. But no bikes, no can't just become an exterior storage facility. Is that clear, staff?
Okay, I will second that motion. Is there any further discussion among the board? Okay, hearing none, then I will take this to a vote. All those in favor of approving of this, this plan signify by saying aye. Aye.
I just wanted to make a comment.
Yes.
I'm voting no. The reason being, as a licensed architect, my emphasis is sustainable design. And I see this yet as another project where the number of units needs to be maximized. Easily, this could be a project of, say, 100 units or 120 units, creating the need for less parking, making the center courtyard more community amenable. So I see this not going the way that I see community projects needed to go, and that is the reason I'm voting no.
Okay, so, Tom, did you vote yes?
No,
You voted no, so we
I'm
have,
voting, I'm concurring. I think.
Okay,
I think
so we have-
Go back and look at this. This is part of the parking
we have a
trend
tie
situation.
then, so,
So Chair and Commission, the motion fails.
right?
So if there's another motion to be entertained, even if it's to deny because of Mr. Shankar's comments, some kind of recommendation would be advised to be provided to the city
Okay.
council. And as you're pondering that, I know we have other individuals that walked in. The public hearing for the item for Frost Avenue is at 7 with the planning commission. This is the design review board. We have another item after this.
Right.
So we'll be going for a while with design review.
Okay. And also, those of you that are in the gallery, there will be opportunities to discuss other elements of this proposal, things like the comprehensive plan, amendments to that, and maybe some of the concerns might be better suited for that kind of discussion. Anant, do you want to make any kind of other motion, or?
The only motion that comes to my mind is this be a less dense development. Perhaps the applicant consider a development of 100 units or 120 units, reducing the need for parking, and look at the interior courtyard, and maybe having the size of the hard surface in the interior courtyard and making the rest of the interior courtyard a landscaped space which is more tenable to community use.
Okay, that is a motion.
Well, if that's what you want.
Well, I think so. We could take it as a motion.
Chair and board, yeah, it's to the board's action here, so.
So is, in that, would you go so far as to say the footprint of the building itself is accessible, but in order to get under that unit threshold, you really got to take the 5th story off of this building to bring it down?
I'm giving the applicant options. They can take the 5th floor off and reduce the number of units, or they can reduce the size of the footprint of the building, however they want to do it.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
No.
I'll say, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor of the new motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that one's unanimous. So actually, both were approved somewhat. So I guess it just says that we think that the design is basically pretty good. It certainly looks attractive. Maybe there's some practicality problems with it, but it's our recommendation then that goes to the city council. They will have the final say. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for speaking with us and showing us materials. I wish you luck on whatever happens. Okay. All right, next item is unfinished business, design review, multifamily residential project, 2615 Maplewood Drive.
Thank you, Chair and Board. So as you hopefully read through the staff report, a unique situation here where this is a project that was reviewed and approved by this board 2 years ago. Design reviews are good for 2 years based on code requirements. So it's September of 2020 when this project was approved. So that approval is coming up and lapsing. So the applicant has submitted the exact same project, exact same plans for the design board to consider approval again for an additional 2 years. So I know context, three of the board members were involved in that action 2 years ago. So we're looking at a 72-unit apartment building at 2615 Maplewood Drive. That's the vacant land to the southwest of the intersection of Maplewood Drive and County Road C East, just under a 9-acre project area. That project is guided medium-density residential and zone multiple dwelling, R3. Again, that site is currently vacant. No uses other than what the board had approved 2 years ago have been proposed in recent history. Again, that proposed use is a permitted use. This would be the only stop for this project. It does not require any review with the Planning Commission. No public hearings are required because, again, it's a permitted by right use. Buildings are required to be set back 30 feet from the street, 100 feet from the north property line. Both those aspects are being met by this project. The parking lot is proposed to be set back 15 feet from the street and 20 feet from the north property line. Again, meeting those minimum requirements. The minimum parking count is also being met. There would be 3 drives off of Maplewood Drive, one to the north, and that's where you access the underground parking garage, and then 2 to the south of the building for a second surface lot. There are wetlands near and on this site. Wetland B, located at the center of the site. Ordinance requires a 50-foot minimum and a 75-foot average wetland buffer. Project is meeting the city's wetland setback requirements, and in these 2 years, as indicated with the staff report, the applicant has been active, working with both the building and environmental staff in further refining the plans to get near building permit approval. A majority of the project areas in the Shoreline Overlay District for Coleman Lake, that limits impervious surface to 30%. This project would have a 14% impervious surface. Overall, the 3-story building would be just under 35 feet in height, so again, no conditional use permit required. The exterior of the building would be comprised of brick, stone, metal panel, and cement siding with a flat roof. All rooftop equipment would be required to be screened from all sides. 35 of the 143 significant trees are being removed. The vast majority would stay. 25 new trees being planted as part of the project. Because so many trees are being preserved, the ordinance does not call out any specific replacement requirements for this development. Ordinance also requires the screening to be installed with headlights. Automobile headlights have the potential to be directed in residential windows. That's where we see that situation potentially occurring and needing additional screening to the north. That's where you'll see the letter that was before you tonight, and also in a couple of slides I'll talk about that letter and further requirements for the screening. Here's the letter. So here's a situation where history somewhat repeated itself. Mr. Nygaard submitted his letter after the staff report had gone out 2 years ago. So I presented the letter at that CDR meeting 2 years ago. Mr. Nygaard asked again for the letter to be submitted to the CDRB after the staff report went out this time. So I've resent and reprinted the hard copy. There's additional hard copies in the back of the room for your benefit to read. Mr. Nygaard, I believe, is present here tonight as well. So staff is recommending applicant further revise plans, just like we did 2 years ago, to meet those screening requirements. These 4 items are the additional requirements that the CDRB added 2 years ago. So I purposely did not include that in the staff report because I wanted the CDRB to consider them, again, individually tonight as the board as it stands today, as 4 members that are present. So you can, I can go back to these too when you are deliberating on the project, but I would call attention to the last point where the applicant would be required to submit a 15-day review project, a copy of the screening plan, so the CDRB would have some oversight before a building permit would be issued and have that confidence that the north side of the north parking lot is adequately screened. Process, when we have CDRB only reviews, we're required to send notices up to 350 feet surrounding the project. We sent notices again this time, as this is being treated as a new review. We did not receive any additional new review comments. Obviously, I printed off Mr. Nygaard's comments, but again, those are from 2020 as well. So with the conditions of approval found in the report, staff is recommending approval of this project. The applicant is also present here and can stand for questions.
Okay. Any questions for staff? I do remember going over this, we had quite a bit of discussion about this project a couple years ago. How about the applicant? Would the applicant like to come forward?
Sure, Matt Frisbee with Frisbee Properties and EF Maplewood, the owners of the land right now, and we came before you 2 years ago, and we're meeting all the medium density requirements, and we kind of went the materials, but I'm open to any questions you might have.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but James Nygaard, we did have a chance to talk. We are working on the fencing and the screening with the lights. I think that came in at the last minute there.
Okay.
And since the project was on hold, we improved the drawings with our civil engineer to show all that, to correct it and enhance it. There are a couple more neighbors that we would like to meet with now that we're seeing some momentum to go this next spring. So we'll keep the neighbors involved in the process.
Okay.
So our current plan, staff don't include a revised landscape plan?
Chair
Or
and
or
board, yeah,
fencing?
the plans that you would be approving and reviewing are the exact same plans that you reviewed 2 years ago, so no
Okay.
revisions.
So we can take those 4 bullet points and
Yep,
add them to the back end of this.
correct, if that's what the board would like to choose.
Is Mr. Nygaard here? Can you, are you satisfied that you're being heard on this issue?
Pat and I have had conversation, and Mike and I have had conversation in the last couple of days.
Okay.
And we've made significant progress. And I think we've got a resolution on the issues that I have entered in the letter. I still have some concerns that I don't understand the lighting above the parking lot and going through. There, I don't know if there's anything in code that requires the focusing the light down on the parking lot,
Okay.
not entering the adjacent property.
Would you like to address that?
Sure. The parking lot light that he's mentioning there is over the overhead garage door, and we do have some parking lot lights, but they're all shielded, and the photometric drawings of the site plan show that we're not crossing the property lines with our light. The other thing is that there's about a 3-foot retaining wall on the whole north side that knocks down the headlights for parking, but on top of that, we're proposing a 6-foot solid fence for screening along with landscaping. So not only if we're knocking down lights, for helping with noise, helping with people walking or having dogs, there was a concern about people maybe crossing. So we're trying to resolve all that with more of a substantial, but you start with a 3-foot retaining wall right off the bat. So really getting up there would be tough. And then with a 6-foot wall or a 6-foot fence, we hope to resolve anything with the parking lights.
Okay. Thank you. I do remember you talking about that a couple years ago, too.
Sure.
So, okay, board, any other comments for
Yeah,
anybody?
I have a question on these 4 items over here. The first one, does this mean that the applicant has to redo their elevations and submit to staff?
Chair and board, correct. And so again, this was a requirement from the board 2 years ago. So before the city would issue any building permits, we would look to make sure that this requirement was met.
Where the building wrapped around on the west side towards the pond, and where it went into the parking garage, it had cast concrete, the foundation was exposed, and they stopped the building material. And so what we asked them to do is to take that building material from the first floor and bring it down around that parking garage entrance and mimic that same material around the building where the footing was exposed.
My
I want to
question
make
is
sure that's
only
captured.
whether this is a resubmittal just for staff review, or is it coming back to the CDRB?
Chair and commission, the intention here was that this would be a staff review.
But greening would be a 15-day review where we would be able to comment.
Correct. That specific fourth item had that caveat of having a CDRB look back, but the first three were the typical, before any building permits were issued, they would have to be satisfied.
Okay,
You comfortable with that? Okay. I'll motion to approve. Gosh. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page. So it would be items. Nope, I went the wrong way. Okay, page 56, I guess ours would be 57 and 58. Section 3.01.1, approval for the development at, I don't have the address up in front of me.
that's 2615 Maplewood Drive.
2615 Maplewood Drive, with all items in the staff report, in addition to the 4 items that were approved the prior time this was reviewed.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will call this to, Mr. Nygaard? Would you like to come forward?
One other issue.
Can you come forward and speak to, we want it to be on the record what you're saying, and they won't hear it on tape if you don't come up here.
My name is James Nygaard, and I live at 1110 East County Road C. So I am the middle of the 5 properties that are on the north side, directly on the north side of the proposal. The question I have is, I've lived on the property for 45 years. There have been more than 5 registered surveyors do the property. And the back line between those, there's more than 40 feet of difference where the back line is. And depending on which ends up being the one, that could have some impact on the property.
Are you saying that the survey is incorrect?
I'm saying there's been 5 surveys. They've come up with different back lines on the property.
You say back line, is it west, east, north, south?
The back line is the line directly between the backyard of the private properties and the
It'd be the south of his
development
property, the north of the development
On the
property.
north, we're on the, directly north of the properties. I have some information that suggests,
Okay, let me just ask this, staff.
So Chair and Board, so the applicant ultimately with the building permit has done so, would need to supply a certificate of survey. They have done that. That's showing where the property lines are and that the setbacks are being met. If Mr. Nygaard feels that there's a discrepancy, that becomes a civil issue. He needs to hire a surveyor to come up with a survey that would then show something different. He has not done that. Mr. Nygaard had the similar concerns 2 years ago as well. So again, we have a certificate of survey from the applicant that is showing where those property lines exist.
Okay, thank you.
Matt and I have had a discussion over the last day. And we are in agreement that we're going to get together and bring the surveyor out and have him show us exactly where the lines are. And we're going to try and get some information on why there's a discrepancy between the variation, the 40-foot variation between.
Okay,
And I think Matt will agree, he and I have agreed to do that over the next month or so.
okay, thank you very much. So we had a motion and a second.